If you would, welcome, first of all, to Indigenous Peoples Day here across our nation. And if you would, I would like you to reflect with me in a moment of silence for the passing of our former Marion County Sheriff, Jason Myers, who fought a very brave battle and recently lost that battle to cancer. If you would, a moment of silence for Sheriff Myers. Thank you all. It is great to have you all here today, and I see a number of our speakers, and everybody is coming to the stage. Thank you for that. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our president, Mr. Mike Herron from Vips Industries.
Thank you. Would you please stand with me for a moment of reflection, followed by the singing of our national anthem, performed today by Grayson Matthews-Eames. We take this time to pray or reflect on our lives and on this moment. We're thankful for the meal before us, for the hands that prepared it, and for those who serve it. We are grateful for this day, for its blessings, its opportunities, and its challenges. May we lend each other strength and guidance as leaders within the Salem community. May we be driven to always give our best and have the courage to rise and meet the challenges we face. Amen. Grayson?
Oh, perfect. I'll squeak past you. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
That's not easy, and Grayson, thank you. You did every tenor in the world proud. Grayson's a team member at Dominguez Accounting and is a proud Salem Chamber ambassador. It's now my honor to introduce our head table today. Today we're joined by the candidates running in Oregon's 6th Congressional District. Welcome Congresswoman Andrea Salinas and candidate Mike Erickson. Next we have our candidates for Oregon Secretary of State. We welcome Treasurer Tobias Reed and Senator Dennis Linthicum. Representing our forum speaker series, presenting sponsor Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions is Agent Chris McLaren. Our monthly sponsor today is Schmecketa Community College, today represented by Bond campaign supporter and Salem Chamber past president, my president, Kathy Gordon. And finally, a special thank you and introduction of Promise King, founder and president of the League of Minority Voters, and Jesse Pione, president of the Salem Business Journal. Both organizations have partnered with the Salem Chamber to make today's candidate debate a reality. Please join me in welcoming our head table. There are others in attendance today that we want to recognize. Our local officials in attendance. We have Salem Ward 6 City Councilor Julie Hoy, Schmecketa Community College board members Neva Hutchinson, Ken Hector, and Diane Watson, and of course, our elected officials on stage. We'd also like to welcome past presidents Brent DeHart, Kathy Gordon, Richard Pine, TJ Sullivan, Wendy Valise, and Alan Kostick, along with Salem Chamber board members Angela Williams, Bill Rickey, Brendan Blair, Jeff Dunn, Jennifer Martin, Katya Mendez, myself, Rich Duncan, Ted Ferry, and Tammy Denny. Thank you. I'd also want to say thank you and welcome to anyone who's here for the first time at a Salem Chamber Forum Luncheon, or if you've been a new member and just joined the Chamber, welcome to you as well. So for the second season in a row, our partners at Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solution serve as our Forum Speaker Series presenting sponsor. Please enjoy a video profile on their company.
What we like to do is create a blueprint for success for them. When it comes to risk management, we are evaluating everything that they have that could cause them harm and providing them solutions to mitigate that. So a lot of it's just by coaching and advising, and it's a great role to be in. It's something that I think a lot of businesses need help with, and we're here to do that.
You're contemplating, how do I expand in a way that makes sense, that protects me and as I grow? You know, we're that asset in your back pocket. We're at the risk management section of your company.
And for me, with my focus being in ag, I've been through a lot of these claim situations. It's a high-risk industry, and so I've been there. My family's been there. I've been involved in these claim processes before, and so it really does bring kind of a calming confidence feeling to the situation. I'm going to advocate for my customers. Farmers have enough going on, and ag business professionals, just with the nature of the business that we're in, that the claim situation doesn't need to be a stressor. And so that's where I come in, and that's what I do, and that's what I like to do.
I'm really passionate about helping employers provide benefit packages to employees that wouldn't typically find that at the next business down the street. Restaurants, hotels, car dealerships. There is usually limited benefits with those and high turnover, and my passion is helping employees not only receive those benefits, but understand those benefits.
Insurance is not a one-size-fits-all product, so I get to really talk to my clients and learn about their life, what's important to them, and provide them with the best service possible.
Thank you to the John family for your continued support, and to the Hagen Hamilton team members in attendance today. So as a proud graduate, it's my honor to introduce our monthly sponsor today, Chemeketa Community College. Since 1969, Chemeketa has served students and community members in the Salem area. Chemeketa transforms lives, I know, and strengthens communities through quality education, services, and workforce training. And you've likely heard the community college will be appearing on your November 5th election ballots. To share more about Chemeketa's bond campaign, we are pleased to welcome Salem Chamber past president, Kathy Gordon.
Good afternoon, Salem Chamber and honored guests. Our community does have a bond measure on the November 5th ballot, and this is a general obligation bond that will support Chemeketa Community College. I'm here just to tell you a little bit about the college and also what that bond is going to do. Our community college system is truly a pipeline of opportunities for both the students of all ages and their future employers. Chemeketa is currently serving 18,000 students a year, offering everything from career training and apprenticeships to GED planning and basic skills to professional degrees and transfer programs. Chemeketa College uniquely meets our community's needs by providing affordability and special benefits like no other community college in this state. The college did hold extensive meetings both on campus and in the community to identify priority areas for this bond measure. From that feedback, the focus will be on cutting-edge career and technical education, disaster resources for our community, improved teaching and learning spaces, and safety and security upgrades. Specifically, this new bond will pay for the following: increased capacity for career and technical education fields in healthcare, the trades, and emergency services. They're going to expand into the Brooks Center the programs in healthcare and emergency services. And the bond funds are going to complete some building projects, including creating a new trade center for apprenticeship programs in plumbing, HVAC, and sheet metal on the Salem campus, as well as spaces for supporting student services and engagement, specifically in Building 2 on the Chemeketa campus and on their athletic fields. And they're going to modernize the current structure for health and wellness programming, complementing its current physical education program and reconfiguring it with matching federal funds to create for the community a disaster resource site. And finally, they're going to introduce a new science lab up in the Woodburn Center, which will allow students to complete associate degrees locally. Classroom modernization and will help Chemeketa with both keeping the pace with technological advances and academic best practices. And finally, enhancing safety on all of the campuses and their centers via parking lot improvements will be a huge boon for the students. Chemeketa manages its resources wisely for our community. For every dollar that is spent on education, each student receives an $8.50 return. And this is significantly higher than any of the community colleges within our state in the average. This bond will not increase our property taxes. We will continue to keep the 27-cent per 1,000 millage rate for Chemeketa, which has been in place since our community voted for the bond back in 2008, 16 years ago. And Chemeketa, I'm pleased to say, Chemeketa has received endorsements from the three major counties that serve the Chemeketa area, from Yamhill County, from their McMinnville Chamber of Commerce, from Polk County, the Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and from Marion and Polk County, from our Salem Chamber of Commerce. I've seen it firsthand. The top-notch education courses that are offered at Chemeketa, both as a student who is in a career change and as an adjunct faculty teaching income tax preparation. And as a fortunate graduate of a community college, I encourage you both to support and to vote for this ballot measure on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Chemeketa, for sponsoring today's event. So today's forum brings us together to learn about two key races that will be appearing in your November general election ballot. Tom, ready to serve as moderator, allow me to introduce our candidates. First, joining us today is Congresswoman Andrea Salinas, who represents Oregon's 6th Congressional District. With a background in public health, advocacy, and legislative experience, she has worked on a range of issues including healthcare, environmental policy, and economic matters. Andrea has been a part of Salem Chamber's programs in the past, and we are proud to have her back in front of our membership. Join me in welcoming Congresswoman Andrea Salinas. Next, we have Mike Erickson, a candidate for Oregon's 6th Congressional District. With over 30 years of experience in the private sector, Mike brings a background in business leadership and job creation. He is focused on addressing issues such as government spending and public safety, aiming to bring his business perspective to public service. Mike has also been a familiar face at Salem Chamber programs in the past. Please welcome Mike Erickson. Also joining us today is Tobias Reed, a candidate for Oregon Secretary of State. Tobias has served as Oregon's state treasurer since 2017, where he oversees Oregon's state bond sales for public infrastructure and manages Oregon's public employee retirement investment accounts. He brings experience in both public and private sectors, having previously worked in business and served in the Oregon legislature. Please welcome Tobias Reed. And finally, we have Dennis Linthicum, candidate for Oregon Secretary of State. Dennis has served as a state senator representing Oregon's District 28 that covers 5 counties in southern Oregon. With a background in technology and business management, he is focused on fiscal responsibility and advocating for issues for rural Oregon through his service on the Senate Judiciary Committee and Senate Committee on Veterans, Emergency Management, and Federal and World Affairs. Please welcome Dennis Linthicum. I hope I got that last committee right. Because that was a mouthful. Okay. Tom Hoffert, our moderator, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, President Herron. Candidates, welcome, and thank you for communicating with us. As you are all aware, we sent out the formats previous, but I will briefly remind our candidates so our audience is aware of how we will navigate through today's conversation. Each candidate will open with a 2-minute introductory statement. We will start with Treasurer Reed, followed by Senator Linthicum. Following that, we will have 2 questions asked by me, the moderator, with a 2-minute response time to each question. There will be no rebuttal on the questions from the moderator. Finally, you as a candidate will be able to ask your opponent a question. We will allow a 2-minute response time followed by a 1-minute rebuttal to your question that you asked your opponent. Lastly, we will end with a 3-minute closing statement by each candidate. After that, we will switch over to our Oregon Congressional District 6 race. With that, I would like to invite both Senator Linthicum and Treasurer Reed to the microphones at the respective corners, and we will begin today's debate by hearing from Treasurer Reed in his 2-minute opening statement, which will begin now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for being here. This is an important race that we get to talk about, and I don't think it always gets the attention that it should. Everyone, of course, is paying attention to the presidential race and the congressional races, but these Secretary of State races are really important too. And I think as you look around the country, you can see why that is the case. In a lot of places, democracy is at risk, I think, in this country. It's not just the mis and disinformation that's being spread. It's not just the violence that is being perpetrated or threatened. It's sometimes just bad policy. And I have a really fundamental belief that we are a stronger state when we work to make sure that everyone who is eligible is registered and is participating in our processes. The Secretary of State also, as I'm sure we will talk about, is the auditor for Oregon, with the opportunity and the responsibility to make sure that tax dollars are spent well and that we're getting the results that we want. That should be something that's driven by data, not by an agenda of predetermined outcomes. And finally, the Secretary of State is also, the office is where every Oregon business registers, and we can make that a much more convenient and smooth process and be a partner to businesses that are trying to hire more people in Oregon. What I bring to the office is 8 years of experience, nearly 8 years, as your state treasurer, where we've had similarly high responsibilities. We manage the portfolio of nearly $140 billion. We protect the state's credit rating, and we deliver for people in ways that they can see and feel. I want to bring that stability and professionalism to the Secretary of State's office based on what I've built at the Treasurer's office. I'm looking forward to the conversation today, and I appreciate the time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Secretary Reed. Treasurer Reed. We will now go to Senator Linthicum for a 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. It's great to be here today. It's good to see so many people curious about Tobias and myself. And I come mostly from a private sector background. I've been in software development my entire professional life and have been a state senator for 8 years and was a county commissioner for 4 years in front of that. The reason I'm running for Secretary of State today is because we see this tribalism that is really creating more concern than the policies coming from the various offices. What we see is a very detrimental perspective on how and where government should be. Should they be in every facet of your life? Some of you may remember riding a bike without a bike helmet. Well, there's an interesting idea. Some of you may remember baking cookies and taking them to church or to a picnic without needing a food handler's license. All of these things have been implemented while the Secretary of State has been standing by and watching. Some of them are implemented through legislative action. Some of them are implemented through IP initiative policy actions. Some of them come from overstepping boundaries. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for audits, but not just debits and credits. They're also responsible for auditing obligations, compliance issues, and regulatory constraints that are on government itself. And I think we need to increase those kinds of constraints and auditing power so that we keep government operating within their boundary.
Thank you, Senator Linthicum. We are now going to just briefly describe what I will call our rules of engagement that I will ask all four of our speakers today to abide by. We'd like to ask that you refrain from interrupting your opponent at any time during their remarks. We'd ask you to adhere to our time clock. The audience cannot see it, but in front of our candidates is a very large, clear clock that I hope everybody can see and work off of today. And lastly, present well for yourself. The Salem business community is very proud to be engaging with all four of you, and we have a keen, watchful eye. So I'm going to begin our first question from the moderator. And Senator Linthicum, you will address this question first, and then we will go over to you, Treasurer Reed. The Oregon Audits Division plays a critical role in ensuring that government programs operate efficiently. How would you use the Audits Division to ensure that the programs which businesses rely on, be it infrastructure, economic development, or pulling of a local building permit, are being administered effectively to support a healthy business environment? You
Thank
have
you.
2 minutes to answer.
You bet. As I alluded to in my opening statement, this is a critical use or job function for the Secretary of State. The function of auditing, you can, in your mind's eye, count through the agencies. There are 86 agencies. Did you count that high as you were going through them? We know of the big ones. We know of Department of Transportation, Department of Justice, Department of Economics. We know of all of those areas. And the auditors typically think in terms of debits and credits and making sure that they have the source document for this invoice and that expense was appropriately categorized. But there's much more to auditing, and part of it is in the question, making sure that these rules are being followed and the productivity of the private sector can be enhanced. There's no sense in having a government that breaks the back of the private sector. Government should be there simply to protect the contractual obligations of the private sector. When you have a private sector that's flourishing, government itself will flourish because government only flourishes based on the tax dollars that citizens can provide. If they're taxed out of their homes or home ownership becomes too expensive or the housing program didn't get initiated properly or followed through on in any sense of efficiency, then all of a sudden we have a government that is failing in its responsibility to the people. So the Secretary of State's office carries much more than a calculator. They carry a worldview that has a critical and keen interest in the people at large, and that's what I'll do as Secretary of State.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Senator Linthicum. Treasurer Reed, would you like the question repeated, or are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Your 2 minutes begin now, sir.
So the joke is that when you're state treasurer, everyone has a stock tip. And what I have observed is that when you're running for Secretary of State, everyone has something that they want to be audited. They might all be right, but what I've concluded is that the appetite for audits is going to be far in excess of capacity. So it's going to be really important for us to pick well and to prioritize so that we can get the most audit bang for audit buck. It would be premature and I think irresponsible for me to say I have a list. I think what we want to avoid is an agenda of weaponizing that power or playing gotcha. What we're after is delivering results and performance for people. For me, there are 3 criteria that will guide my thinking about how to create an audit plan. The first is to ask, where are we spending a lot of money and not getting the results that we want? Just one example of that is the question of affordable housing and housing development. A second criteria is, where do we have a long history of underperformance? An example of that for me is information technology. That's pretty central to a lot of what we do, and it's certainly going to increase in importance. The third criteria for me is places where the state is taking a direct, responsible role for the welfare of individual Oregon lives. Examples of that might include foster care or people who are incarcerated. These are just a selection of examples, and it's going to be important, again, I think, to find the place where we get the most audit bang for audit buck. Finally, that's not the end of the story, because while the Secretary of State decides on the audits and conducts them, In most cases, the Secretary of State does not act on those findings. So having a deliberate and intentional strategy to make sure that decision makers, whether it's the legislature or a school board or a city council, has that information and those findings in front of them as they make decisions going forward is going to be separate. It's essential that this power be taken seriously and administered fairly.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. You will actually start the answers portion to this question. And Senator Linthicum, we will come to you second. Each of you, again, will have 2 minutes to answer this question. Looking at both the national debate around election integrity and the local debate on how to increase citizen participation in our elections, Oregonians have expressed a clear desire to see improvements in how elections are conducted. Given these discussions, what specific steps would you take to improve the participation of our electorate in ways that are both transparent and enhance voter confidence in the integrity of Oregon's election system?
And we have 2 minutes. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we should be really proud of the fact that we have done good work in Oregon. We lead the country in terms of voter participation, and we should be proud of that, but we shouldn't expect that it's something that's automatic. So let me address something I'm sure is on everyone's mind. As someone who believes in that aim to make sure that everyone who is eligible to vote is registered and chooses to vote, I think I am as upset as anyone with the recent revelations about what has happened at the DMV and in the Secretary of State's office. And I think we have to think about that by separating that aim from the question of whether the policies and procedures we have in place and the execution follows on that. We already know from the DMV's own after-action report that we've fallen short on both of those counts. I'm glad that the governor has begun an external review, but I think that review has to focus on both of those categories, the policies and procedures and the execution, and people need to be held accountable. You can count on me doing that if I'm Secretary of State. We also have opportunities to build confidence in our election systems as people choose to participate. Several counties in Oregon participate in something called ballot tracks. I think Marion County has it as well. People can opt in and get a notification when a ballot is sent, when a ballot is returned, when a signature is verified, and when a vote is counted. When people have that opportunity, that makes them more confident. Several counties in other states are also engaged in ballot ride-alongs, which allow people to follow the path that a ballot follows and learn more about the policies, the procedures, the controls that are in place. Because I think people have to have confidence in our system, and we can do that. We're much better off when people are fully participating and making sure that their voices, their preferences are part of our system. That's the agenda for me as Secretary of State.
Thank you, Treasurer. Senator Linthicum, would you like me to repeat the question, sir?
Sure, go through it for me.
Okay. Looking at both the national debate around election integrity and the local debate on how to increase voter participation in elections, Oregonians have expressed the desire to see improvements on how elections are conducted. Given these discussions, what specific steps would you take to improve participation of the electorate in ways that are both transparent and enhance voter confidence in the integrity of Oregon's election systems?
That's great. I asked you to go through it again for me because I was busy in my mind calculating counter answers to the answer that Tobias presented, but I think one of the most important facets that you have in that is two key words: confidence and transparency. Many of you may or may not know I was part of a information request from Jackson County, one of the counties within my Senate district. My Senate district used to include Lake, Crook, a portion of Deschutes, Klamath County, and a portion of Jackson County. So it's perfectly legitimate as a sitting senator to request ballot images from the Jackson County Clerk's office. The Jackson County Clerk said, sure, you can see these images if you'll provide us a check for $987,000, $987,862.17. That's how precise they are. And this is not transparent, and it does not inspire confidence. This information is required by Oregon statute to be available for 24 months, for 2 years. And in that time, could any of you raise $1 million to walk into your county clerk's office and say, please, I would like to see the ballot results? No, you can't. And so what happens is your imagination runs wild, quote, conspiracy theories bloom, and all of a sudden we're faced with a dilemma. Do we trust the election, or do we want to question our government? I think questioning the government is the legitimate answer. Government should be held accountable, and we should continue down that track.
Thank you, Senator. Now is the portion of our program where you will each be able to pose a question to your opponent. We will start with Treasurer Reed, who may ask Senator Linthicum one question. Your response is to be 2 minutes in time, and we will allow a 1-minute rebuttal to the asker of each question. Treasurer Reed, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I noticed you didn't put a limit on the question, but I promise I will not take more than a minute.
If the pontification goes a little
don't
long,
worry.
I may interrupt.
Don't worry. I just remember this was a loophole in the legislature. You can ask questions, and people sometimes exploit that. Senator, you and I had a chance to be on the radio on Friday, and in the course of that discussion, I asked you whether you thought that Joe Biden won the election in 2020. You chose not to answer that question. But I think it's an important question because it gets to the core responsibility of the Secretary of State to certify elections, to uphold standards, but to certify an election even if you don't like the outcome. So having had some more time to think about that, I wonder if you'd like to weigh in on whether Joe Biden legitimately won the election in 2020.
This is actually a beautiful question because it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of faith, authority, and power. Do we have faith in government because it's powerful? Do we have faith in the authority of government because it's powerful? Do we have faith in government because everything they say is always true every day, all the time? Our criminal justice department is entirely built on defending the rights of the individual, not defending the power of the powerful. And so what we see in this question is a misunderstanding of where authority comes from. Here's my point. We don't put our authority in government because they're powerful. We put our authority in government because they exhibit through evidence and through eyewitness accounting and through results that they are worthy of our trust. Remember, in the Declaration, the government is instituted with powers, delegated, simple temporary powers, because we, the people, actually consent. And so consent of the governed is the most important facet that gets neglected in this. What we see is now that we have super social media technologists, and now that we have government mandates coming down about whether you should do COVID or not, or take a jab or not, or be an independent mind, we see this onslaught. Will you agree to this position? I think that's a wrong facet of this discussion. The facet of discussion is, why doesn't government have our trust?
Thank you, Senator. Now a 1-minute rebuttal by Treasurer Reed.
Thank you. I listened carefully when I asked that question 4 times on Friday, and I listened carefully today. I've yet to hear an answer. And I think that is really telling, because the statutes of Oregon dictate that the Secretary of State is the chief elections officer. That's a core responsibility. And it doesn't mean you have to like the outcome, but the Secretary of State has to uphold integrity and responsibilities and standards, and then certify an election. That election was 4 years ago, and I think the senators should be prepared to answer that Joe Biden won the election in 2020.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. Now, Senator Linthicum, you may pose a question to your opponent, Treasurer Reed.
So I don't get a rebuttal to the rebuttal? I'm teasing that, don't worry. You have these, you and I have done this on multiple occasions, so we're actually fairly familiar with our positions, and you are intent on stressing the government's position and having the Secretary of State be one of the individuals responsible for, quote, rescuing our democracy. And as you save our democracy and talk about election integrity and being able to follow adhere to the law, can you explain to this audience why Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, is currently the candidate on the Democrat ticket without yet having received a single vote from a single citizen, from a single elections office, from a single county out of the 3,400 counties in the United States?
Senator, I want to make sure we have enough time to answer all questions.
You bet. We're almost done. From a single of the 50 states, not one of you cast a vote for Kamala Harris. You may all be Republicans, praise God, but if you're not,
Senator, we are a bipartisan organization. I think I want to give Treasurer Reed the opportunity to answer your inquiry.
Let's go. Here we are.
The Democratic and Republican parties manage their own processes for selecting their nominees. The Democratic Party selected Vice President Harris to be our nominee, and in 22 days, we'll get to find out if she's going to be the next president.
1 minute rebuttal, sir.
You bet. This is beautiful. You see, this is a little bit of obfuscation. The republic, the faith in our republic comes from the consent of the governed. The faith in our republic comes from you having a voice at the ballot box. The faith in our republic and the elections results come from you knowing that you had the opportunity to express your concerns. And when that opportunity is whisked away behind some magic curtain of power, you know deep in your heart and soul that something is different during this election. So it's time to look at the details. What makes this election different than any other election? What makes this candidate super special that we don't have to go through what all the other candidates have gone through? This is problematic. I hope you recognize it as being problematic and vote for Dennis Linthicum, Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We will now enter our closing comments. These are 3 minutes in length. Again, I'd ask you to help us with the timing so we can get to other portions of our program. We will start with Senator Linthicum and close with Treasurer Reed. Your 3 minutes begin now, sir.
Thank you. This is an important election. As you hear, there is a disparity between the worldviews, the mindset, the goals for these two candidates for Secretary of State. We can talk about election integrity, and we can talk about fulfilling the role of our office appropriately and whatever. But there's something running deep underneath that most people don't recognize, and unfortunately we see this bubbling up in the Chamber of Commerce businesses. What we see is your businesses are being hammered. They're being hammered with how do you start that employee at that salary and still and let him, quote, live close enough to your office to get to work, or close enough to your job site or to your warehouse. These, oops, is that really government policy? Quite frankly, yes, it is. Almost 30% of housing costs is taken up in zoning and conditional fees that come from your county, as well as state, as well as the land use department, as well as sustainability issues. The price of electricity is going through the roof, and that employee maybe can get to work, but he can't afford gas next week, or he can't afford the power at his home to charge his electric vehicle. And each of these things is all because of government policy. I used to write a newsletter known as the Dirt Road Economist. That was my trade name, the Dirt Road Economist, because everything you're wearing, everything you see here, your chairs, your tables, the walls, the wallboard, the lights, your computers, your iPhones, this magic timer in front of us, everything, the granite in your counter at home comes from a dirt road somewhere. And we have to recognize that those businesses, those hard workers, those men and women who are pulling rock out of the earth and turning it into a beautiful granite countertop, those men and women have to be able to survive without government and the expense of government crushing them at every turn. So this is a beautiful opportunity to express your understanding, not that the Secretary of State can magically do things, but we need a government that is responsive to the consent of the people. If government is no longer responsive to the consent of the people, if government no longer listens to you and I, then what's going on here? This is power, maintaining power, and it's time for us to seek freedom instead.
Thank you, Senator Linthicum. Treasurer Reed, your 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, I really appreciate the chance to be here and to talk with all of you. I want to start with one place that the Senator and I certainly agree. We have very different visions for this office and our priorities. I heard a lot about philosophy a moment ago. What I want to talk about are the core responsibilities of the Secretary of State's office. They are around elections. They are around audits. They're around the corporation division, and they are around the archives. I'm the only one in this race who has served in statewide office, who has had the task of managing a staff of a couple hundred people with critical responsibilities for delivering for people. It's good to serve in the legislature and to pass bills and to give speeches. It's another thing to deliver results and actually ensure performance. In all the speeches I've given as treasurer, I've never heard anyone say, "I wish you would talk longer." So I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. One, we've had 4 secretaries of state during the time that I've been treasurer. So I think there is a clear need for some stability and professionalism. That's what I want to bring to the Secretary of State's office. I recognize that I am not the flashiest candidate you may ever have seen up here. But I would also humbly suggest that we may have seen enough drama in the Secretary of State's office for a while. So again, I really appreciate the chance to be with you. You don't have to guess what it's like to have me as a statewide elected official. I hope you'll support me in bringing the stability and professionalism we've developed at the State Treasury to an office that I think greatly needs it. I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking both candidates? Thank both of you gentlemen, and I appreciate you working with the moderation and keeping things on track. I would now like to invite Congresswoman Salinas and candidate Erickson up to their respective podiums. Again, we're going to follow the same. Thank you. We're going to follow a very similar format. We will have 2-minute opening remarks by each candidate, starting with Congresswoman Salinas, followed by candidate Erickson. After that, we will have 2 moderated questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond with no rebuttal. Finally, we'll end with a question from each candidate to each other. We'll have a 2-minute time for an answer and a 1-minute rebuttal, and then finally, 3-minute closing statements. With that, we're going to start our first 2-minute segment by Congresswoman Andrea Salinas, and your time starts now.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Congresswoman Andrea Salinas, and I have been serving Oregon's new 6th District for the past 21 months. As a first-term member serving in the minority, I have been focused on delivering results for our communities. I got a bill passed and signed into law, one of only 27 bills last year. I've worked across the aisle to chief sponsor and pass 3 bills out of my Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and got several amendments attached to bills that also passed out of committee. I was able to get 5 different policies included in the Farm Bill reauthorization and have several more policies in the Senate's placeholder Farm Bill that will help farmers and rural communities. But right now, businesses and working families feel the pain of following all the rules and still falling short. But you can only do so much in the minority if the majority won't heed your calls for action. That's why I'm running for re-election. I'm running to work across the aisle to bring down the cost of living and make life better for working people. I'm running because my daughter and her generation deserve a better, healthier planet, a healthy economy with robust job prospects. They deserve the same reproductive freedoms that my opponent's ex-girlfriend had when he paid for her abortion. and I'm committed to delivering that better future for all Oregonians. I've made it my mission to be a policymaker, not a politician. And that's why I'm working with members of both parties to bring down the cost of gas and groceries, tackle the fentanyl and addiction crisis, and make housing more affordable for Oregon families. I've secured over $315 million in federal grant funding for critical programs in my district, and now I'm fighting to bring even more of your tax dollars back in next year's budget. I've been fighting and delivering for this community for nearly 2 years as a member of Congress, and I want to continue to do the work needed to make Oregon a better place for everyone to get ahead, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And now we will turn over to candidate Erickson. Again, sir, you have 2 minutes, and your time begins now.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a pleasure to be here, and also a real pleasure to be running for Congress to represent the people of this state and our county and our district here. I've never been in office. I've been a business guy for 32 years. I've been a family man. I've got a young child, a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, going to school here. My wife's been a labor delivery nurse. My dad was a policeman for 30 years, and I watched my dad growing up about giving back to the community. 30-year police officer, risking his life every day, always wondering if he's going to come home and worry about those things as a family member of a police officer. And boy, did you worry. I mean, he was in the middle of a lot of big things going on. I mean, crime and drugs, and he was an undercover police officer trying to get to the root of the problem of all these drugs and the drug dealers. So he was really out there risking his life undercover. And I appreciate what he did. But when he came home, it meant more to me. He'd go back and work at the food bank. He'd work at Habitat for Humanity. He just gave back. He was a real inspiration for what I really believe is public service. You watch what they do out there with policemen and the things they do after work. It means a lot to me. It's instilled in me about giving back as well. I went into the business world after I graduated from Portland State University. I worked at Tiger and Fred Meyer to pay my way through school. I was the first member of my family to go to school and get a degree, a business degree at Portland State. I didn't know what I was going to do right when I graduated, but I got into the logistics supply chain field in like the UPS, FedEx, the trucking world. So after graduating, I started a company about 3 or 4 years after graduating from college, and I'm proud to say that company's been one of the fastest growing companies in Oregon multiple years. I'm the CEO and founder and the owner of the company, very active today, run the business, providing health care, and all the things you do as a business owner. You're an everyday problem solver, as many of you are, as a CEO and president of a company. You deal with making sure your health care costs are lower for your employees. This year, our insurance for health care is going up 15%. Just last week, we got the word. So I'm going out and shopping it. I'm going to go back and try to get lower costs for all my employees for co-pays and all that.
Thank you, candidate Erickson. Appreciate it, sir. We will now start two separate questions. You will have 2 minutes to reply, and we will start by candidate Erickson. You will answer the first question, and you have 2 minutes to do so. Oregon's small businesses are the backbone of our state's economy, but many face challenges with rising costs, workforce shortages, and access to capital. What specific steps would you take to create an environment that helps small business succeed and promotes economic growth in our region?
Thank you for the question. It's almost a continuation from what I was just talking about. The rising costs of healthcare costs, the rising costs of running a business, employee wages, all those things are going up. A lot of companies, small companies, are struggling. During COVID, it was terrible for my business. My business depended on going out and going to trade shows and marketing. You couldn't travel. You couldn't get out there to meet new customers. We struggled for a couple of years. I'm sure a lot of you did too, where restaurants were closed, businesses were lost employees, so they had to shut down. There's a lot of things going on that happened during COVID and other parts of the time frame here that really affect businesses. Less regulation, less government interference are two of the things I really believe in. The less government's involved in our lives, the better. I think the government is there to keep us safe. Education, healthcare, transportation, all the core basics are important. But sometimes they go too far. I'm also in the real estate and some land development stuff, and I see how hard it is to go through and even develop an existing property, to remodel things. It takes 1 to 2 years to go through and remodel an existing home. The permit process is very painful, expensive. We need to do more to keep government out of our lives, or at least to a lesser degree, but we need to do things like that. I know that it's not everybody here is a business owner, but it's tough being a business owner. We're the backbone of the economy. More people are employed by small businesses than any other company out there, any other group. So I know there's the Intels and the big corporations and Nike, but it's you guys in this room here, the small businesses that really make up this district, this country. And I'm proud to say that I'm gonna go back and work for you guys and the other people in this district, the farmers, who are all small businesses. They need someone back in Washington, D.C. looking after them and working for them. The one thing I will differ from my opponent and I is clearly gonna be on our votes. If you look at her voting history, I can almost guarantee I'll be the exact opposite how she voted in Congress. We just had a bill just a week ago on the Restore the Forests Act. There are so many people out there in rural communities. She voted against the Restoration Forest Act, which would have provided a lot of resources and funds for all the forest fire devastation.
Thank you,
Why she would
Candidate
vote no
Erickson.
on that a week ago, I'm still baffled.
Thank you, Candidate Erickson. Congresswoman Salinas, would you like me to repeat the question, ma'am? No, thank you. Okay, your 2 minutes begin now.
Well, thank you. And I understand the question perfectly because as I've been the member of Congress for this district, I have been touring the district and holding meetings with businesses and doing chamber walking tours in Monmouth and here in Salem and across the district. And I am hearing constantly, and one of the biggest challenges I keep hearing about are the workforce challenges. So what I have been doing is trying to figure out how do we make sure that we have a more robust workforce economy, and how do we meet people where they are. And we know right now our kids aren't all kind of desk and pencil kind of learners. They want hands-on experience. And C-Tech has been an incredible opportunity for so many kids, and starting to match the C-Tech programs with the community college programs, with the higher education programs. And so through my Science, Space, and Technology Committee, these are some of the exact bills that I have passed. So making sure that we see some of the trickle-down effects from investments in soon-to-be artificial intelligence, which we know is coming our direction. How are we going to make sure that our schools and our school systems are using that? How do we as Americans make sure we get ahead on quantum research and quantum security? We know that's the only way to keep our data secure, but our workforce needs these tools and needs these pieces also. We also need to make sure that we are actually addressing capital needs, and I have signed on to bills that would actually address research and development and additional capital for small businesses. There are so many different components that we should be looking at, and it is an and proposition. We have to be giving small businesses the tools that they need to be successful for themselves and their workers.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We will now ask the second question, and we'll start with Congresswoman Salinas and then come to Candidate Erickson. Again, this is a 2-minute timed question. Oregon businesses, like those across the country, are feeling the pressures of rising inflation, affecting everything materials, transportation, and labor, while eroding purchasing power. U.S. Congress has been considering various measures to address inflation, such as reducing regulatory burdens and managing federal spending. What specific actions do you support to help Oregon businesses cope with inflation and ensure their long-term economic stability? Congresswoman Salinas, your 2 minutes begin now.
One of the big things that the last Congress passed in the 117th Congress was the CHIPS and Science Act. And the idea around that was to make sure that we are repatriating the manufacturing of something in the 90s that we were strong on, which is manufacturing semi-chip conductors. And so we are redoing that right now, and we are making sure that Oregon takes the lead on this. We have seen billions of dollars being invested here. I have been pushing, again, through my Science, Space, and Technology Committee, working with the chair, Frank Lucas, and the Department of Commerce to make sure that Oregon gets a tech hub, because we know that these chips are used in everything, and this is part of the supply chain bottleneck right now. So to make sure that businesses' costs will start to lower, we see them in everything, from microwaves to appliances to our computers. So that's a big piece of this. We also need to make sure that folks are seeing reduced costs in terms of groceries and housing. And this is another area where I've worked on the Farm Bill reauthorization. We need a Farm Bill passed. Our growers here in Oregon and in the Valley need to make sure that they have their price supports in place. We also need to make sure that housing is addressed here. Again, this goes back to the workforce, and we're seeing housing costs increase constantly. But making sure that we have more private public partnerships through increased private activity bonds, where the government takes some of that responsibility, we will be able to, because this is a housing stock issue, we will be able to increase housing stock. We will also be able to give some additional tax breaks for those who are investing. These are all the types of investment tools that the government can provide and can help businesses to get a jump start as we are facing our way out of this economic struggle.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Candidate Erickson, would you like me to repeat the question, sir?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes begin now.
Well, inflation's impacting every one of us in our everyday lives. It's become a problem for those that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, day to day. Our wages aren't keeping up with inflation. What am I going to do back in Congress? One thing I want to do, use the background I got in supply chain logistics to go back and really address one of the drivers of inflation, the cost of goods delivered. Every item that you buy at a Fred Meyer, a Safeway, any retailer is delivered by a truck. Whether it be from the farmer's field, they're using diesel. From the farmer's field to the warehouse, to the stores, everything is delivered by truck. Trucking costs are some of the most expensive items out there today. Diesel is the highest item, not unleaded fuel, but diesel. Diesel is huge right now. Some states it's $6, $8 a gallon. They're passing on these costs of diesel back to the consumers through the products you see at the store. That's one of the biggest drivers. They're just passing them on. I want to get our country back to being energy independent so we can drive down the cost of diesel and fuel, which is a big burden for people driving to work or whether it be getting the food and items to the grocery stores. We need to do a better job at doing that. And I'll do everything I can to make sure if we're doing all the right things, whether it be fracking, whether becoming more energy independent in all the different ways we can, we need to do that. We need to open the Keystone Pipeline and things like that we shut down when Biden became president. I think that was a bad decision on day one and drove up the price of fuel for everybody here. I'd like to just touch on one other thing that Ms. Salinas did say here. She said she wants to support farmers. Her first real chance in Congress, the first real big farm bill, H.R. 2, came across the chance to vote in Congress. This is, again, a difference between her and I. Farmers are upset with her right now. She voted no to the first big farm bill that potentially could have impacted all the farmers in Polk and Marion County. She said no. It's on record. Asked why, you go to Univision or a few of the other, she says the bill did not go far enough for the migrant workers that are here from the benefits. That's just wrong. We got to take care of the farmers and the people that are struggling every day and take care of them first and foremost, not politicizing a farm bill.
Now will be the portion where each candidate may ask their opponent a question. We will start with candidate Erickson asking Congresswoman Salinas a question. As a reminder, you will have 2 minutes to answer your opponent's question, and the question asker may then have a 1-minute rebuttal. Candidate Erickson, the floor is yours to ask Congresswoman Salinas a question.
Thank you. One thing that really puzzles me is the voting record of Andrea Salinas that's not made public. I just mentioned one about the Farm Bill. There was another one I mentioned earlier about the Forest Recovery Act. She voted no for that. Now, that was a bipartisan bill that had only about 50 or 60 Democrats vote against it. The most liberal in the whole country is Nancy Pelosi. She voted for it, knowing how important it was for her Northern California areas that are ravaged by forest fires. Congresswoman Salinas voted no to that, to restore the forest. All these people I've talked to from the timber industry and other folks, it was a big mistake. That's another vote that I would have voted yes. She voted no. She voted against the Farm Bill. You're elected member of Congress.
Candidate Erickson, may I ask, could we draw to the question, sir?
Okay, sorry. The big question I have along those lines is, why did you vote for tolling on I-5 when 85% of the residents of this state are adamantly opposed to tolling? This is up to $3.44 by a lot of different people. Why in the heck to use I-5, a user fee to go from Salem to Portland, to pay $3? Why would you vote for tolling in the state of Oregon?
You have, thank you. You have a 2-minute response time, and then we will have a rebuttal by candidate Erickson.
Thank you. I believe the bill that Mr. Erickson is referring to was an omnibus package back in 2021, and The initial bill had been passed in 2017 when I was not a state legislator to actually authorize tolling in Oregon. But the subsequent bill had a lot of different components in it that we needed to pass in order to make sure that transportation projects got out the door. I will say that I was clearly on the record as opposed to tolling. I signed on to a letter as a legislator from Clackamas County. It was a bipartisan letter. In fact, at the time, Minority Leader Drazen was on it. We asked essentially our colleagues to not proceed with tolling on I-205. I think Representative Rick Lewis was on it, Jeff Reardon was on it. So a bunch of us from Clackamas County basically said, this is really going to hurt the arterials in our district. So at the time I was representing Lake Oswego, and on the other side of the river, West Lynn, and the I-205 goes right through there, and that would have hurt my community. So absolutely, I was on the record as opposing that tolling project. And I've heard the same thing from communities here in Wilsonville and along I-205. This is not the right route to take. And so I have weighed in with my colleagues in the legislature, my former colleagues in the legislature, and I have been able to essentially say to them, you know, I think we need to put a halt to this, and it sounds like the governor did just that pretty recently. So that is not an issue anymore, but we do need to figure out how we address transportation and transportation projects in this country. And I'm really excited to continue to work next year as your re-elected member of Congress on the big transportation package that is coming forward.
Thank you, Congresswoman Salinas. 1 minute rebuttal to candidate Erickson. Your time starts now, sir.
Your vote tells all. You had a chance to vote no on that tolling bill. Whether it was an omnibus bill or whether other people voted for it that you mentioned here, that didn't matter. You voted yes to tolling in Oregon. You can't get around your vote, period. You voted no to a lot of things that I would have voted yes to. Your votes and my votes would be completely different in Washington, D.C. I'm going to go back and be fiscally conservative, common sense, business-minded person back there, watching out for our taxpayer dollars and being careful in how we spend our money. We're back there, put there by you folks, to represent us to how you spend the federal dollars. I think we have wasted so much money in government. We do need a better job at watching closely over how our tax dollars are being spent. I do that with my business every day. I do it with my family budget. So I'll be very conservative when it comes to spending your dollars. I'll be a very good watchdog for how your dollars get spent. And I think putting $3 tax bill, which is really what it is, on a toll for everybody to go, whether it be Tigard, whether it be 205 or I-5, you voted yes to tolling, and you can't sugarcoat it with what you just said.
Thank you, candidate Erickson. Now we will have the opportunity for Congresswoman Salinas to ask candidate Erickson a question. You will have 2 minutes to answer, sir, and we will return for a 1 minute rebuttal. The floor is yours, Madam Congresswoman.
Thank you. Candidate Erickson, during your first run for Congress in 2006, you ran on a strictly anti-abortion platform. You did the same in 2008, and in 2022, you called yourself very, very, very pro-life and stated clearly in 2 separate questionnaires that you support banning abortion. Sometimes you make exceptions for rape and incest, but sometimes you say it shouldn't be allowed at all unless the life of the mother is in danger. Your position constantly changes on this issue, and voters, 50% of the workforce are women, deserve to know how would you behave on an actual policy change. So my question is, if and when a bill comes to the floor to restore Roe v. Wade protections for abortion at the federal level, and it absolutely will come up at some point, would you vote yes or no?
Clearly, I've told other people in a lot of different forums, and I'll be real clear here, I'm not for a national abortion plan where you can't have abortions nationally. So I would vote no to a national abortion plan. That answers your question. Back to the other question, I've never asked anybody in my life for someone to get an abortion. You brought something up in your very opening statement, which I thought was a low blow. It was just terrible. I've never asked anybody to get an abortion. So don't ever ask that again. I never have. If somebody wants to get an abortion, that's up to them. I never asked anybody to get an abortion. That's on the record now. So I'm offended by that. But back to the real question here is the tolling, the farm bill, the other bills that you voted for that are hurting Oregonians. Most importantly, you voted the wrong way for Oregonians. I know you spent 45 years or 40 years of your life in San Francisco. You came up here a few years ago, got appointed to the legislature in Lake Oswego. I've been most of my life born here. You went to UC Berkeley. You worked for Senator Feinstein in California. You worked down there for Congressman Stark. You've worked for Harry Reid. You spent most of your life out of this state. I can see why you're voting wrong here for Oregonians here. The farmers are upset with you. Police are upset with you. You vote for so many things, like you want to eliminate mug shots. Having my dad as a police officer, you need those mug shots to find people who are maybe hidden out there or hiding from the police. You said no to mug shots for use. You voted yes to letting all criminals, rapists, rapists and murderers that are in prison, you voted to have them vote, be able to vote. Right now they can't, but you want that. Maybe in California you do that. Maybe in California you're used to seeing all the tolls in San Francisco where you drive around and on the I-5 down there's tolling down in San Francisco, but Oregonians do not want that. I know you're mostly from California. I'm mostly from right here in the Northwest my entire life. So I don't believe in tolls here in Oregon. I'll vote no against tolls. I'm gonna vote for you guys to do what's right.
Thank you, candidate Erickson. 1 minute rebuttal by Congresswoman Salinas.
Thank you. So I heard that you would not vote to restore Roe v. Wade. And this is a national issue right now. We are seeing states like even Idaho, where there are such restrictions that we are seeing a flood of patients coming into Oregon. And as I talk to providers, as I talk to healthcare systems, as I try to understand where some of these additional costs are coming from, we are seeing really our system being stretched right now. And I've talked to OBGYNs who are very fearful of actually continuing their practices because of their fear of being criminalized by people coming from other states. So the restoration of Roe v. Wade nationally would help ease the pressure that states like Oregon, who are seeing, right, we pretty much have choice here, but we are seeing the effects of it in our healthcare system, and we can't right now. That is not fair to us to take people from Texas and from Idaho and from other states that have actually banned abortion care and abortion service.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We will now enter our closing remarks. Again, these are 3 minutes in length, and we will start with candidate Erickson.
I'm running for Congress because there's a lot of problems that need work on right now. We need some common sense, fiscally conservative people, minded people back in Washington, D.C. to bring real solutions and real creative new ideas to the problems we're seeing. Our country's a mess. We all see that, whether you be Democrat or Republican. We got the opposing sides are fighting each other. There's no political getting along anymore. I grew up in a family where half my family were Democrats and half Republicans. My mom was a Democrat, my dad was a conservative Republican. We got along. My wife has an identical twin. She's a very liberal Democrat. My wife's conservative. And it's funny to see these folks when they're together, like the Biden or Trump, but we get along. We need that kind of common sense back in Washington, D.C. We need to work together. Too many people back in Congress, they're incompetent politicians. I don't think they should be back there. They're career politicians, like my opponent. She's never run a business, 40 years in politics. She was a lobbyist for the unions. She was a lobbyist in D.C. She was a lobbyist for immigration rights for people crossing the border. She was a lobbyist for other folks. Then she was appointed state representative, working for Senator Feinstein. Her and I are completely opposite when it comes to how you're going to vote. You've heard 3 of the bills today. You want a member in Congress who's going to vote for Oregonians, not Californians. She was quoted 2 years ago when she was running for Congress. Somebody asked her in a magazine, says, what do you think of the electoral system here in the United States? And would you support it or not? I would scratch my head wondering, is she really representing Californians or Oregonians? You know what her answer was when that question from the reporter, what do you think of the electoral system? You can read it yourself. Well, I think California, remember she's from California, I think California, who has such a huge population, is being treated unfairly compared to these smaller states like Oregon. They only got 2 members of the Senate, and Oregon's got 2. That's really unfair. California needs more representation. That's in a magazine that she was interviewed. I wondered, who in the heck are you representing, California or Oregon? Your votes show you're not working for Oregonians. I'm shocked at that quote. It was in the paper. You probably know what you're talking about the electoral college system. It's just not right. Oregonians are getting fed up with what's going on in this country. I'm running to make sure we take care of you guys, the people of this state, first and foremost. And I'm going to work hard for you back there. I really am a problem solver, an everyday problem solver, whether it be at work or family issues or for my clients. My clients have us help them with their supply chain struggles and supply chain issues. We represent some of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, the John Deere's and the Under Armour's and the Starbucks. Large corporations put their trust in my company and me to help them with supply chain solutions and logistics problems. We're a real problem-solving company, and I'm that as an individual. I'll bring that mindset back to Washington, D.C. to work for you, solve problems, and not be a part of the problem. I look forward to working across the aisle to take care of what's right for the people in this state and this country. I promise you that. I just hope you vote for Mike Erickson and tell your friends and family to vote for Mike Erickson. We're in a very close election, and this election matters a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Erickson. And Congresswoman Salinas, you will have the final 3 minutes to give your closing statements. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Well, there have been a lot of accusations and lies made about me, but the one that I just have to clarify is I have not been a career politician for 40 years. I would have had to start when I was 14 years old, and so that has not happened. I just want everybody to know. I have served, though, for 5 years in the Oregon State Legislature and for the last 21 months in Congress. So I am not a career politician, but my opponent has run more times than I actually have, and so he is a career candidate who continues to lose. I will say, in terms of, I want to clarify a couple other things. Before I took a no vote on the Farm Bill reauthorization, I actually called the Oregon Farm Bureau, I called the Nursery Association to let them know that we need a balanced approach. And I went to my committee chairman, G.T. Thompson, and I said, look, let's go back to the table. This was a take it or leave it proposition. You cut SNAP benefits by $30 billion. That would have left 42,000 seniors, veterans, and kids in my district without food. And I guess Mr. Erickson is saying he would have voted yes to allow 42,000 people to go without food. And I asked my chairman, can we please go back to the negotiating table? He said no. He was like, I have the votes in committee and I have the votes on the floor. Well, half of it was true. He did have the votes out of committee, but we still have not passed it off the floor because they need Democrats to work with them to get it passed. And that's the kind of work I do. I try to meet people where they are, and I try to make sure we can move forward. But before I took that no vote, I let my Farm Bureau and my nurseries know. It is probably why I have the Oregon Association of Nurseries endorsement. And I'm proud of that endorsement. I've been working to try to figure out what we do around specialty crops, what we do around utility bills and energy costs for our growers. But really, and trying to figure out what we do with our forests and making sure that wood innovation and the things that we grow here in Oregon are exported overseas. I've been working on some of the trade provisions around this. I want to continue to build on the work I've done and on my accomplishments from the 118th Congress into the next. I'll continue to make our community safer, ensure people have access to high-quality, affordable health care, including mental health and abortion services, bring down the cost of living for the hardworking people of my district. I've held 10 town halls, hosted multiple ag and business roundtables, visited sheriffs, county commissioners, mayors, city councilors to understand the needs of the district and turn those into actual legislation. Half the bills I've introduced have bipartisan co-leads, and I've co-sponsored over 100 bills sponsored by Republicans. I don't have sound bites and concepts like my opponent. I have specific solutions, and I'm working to make Oregon's 6th District better. But sadly, my opponent is all about airing past grievances and talking about past elections. He's not fighting for families of the 6th, he's fighting for himself and his ego. It's time to put an end to career candidates. I have a proven track record. I hope to earn your support.
Thank you, Congresswoman Salinas. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in acknowledging and applauding both candidates?
That was great. It's an honor to partner today with the League of Minority Voters and the Salem Business Journal in putting together today's candidates panel, as well as a big thank you to Ryan Tribbett, the owner of PacWest Lobby, who's also instrumental in coordinating our speakers. Thank you to Grayson from Dominguez Accounting for the national anthem. Thank you to Allied Video Productions, Capital Community Media, and Salem Convention Center for all of your work behind the scenes and handling the logistics of these forum lunches. Thank you to our Salem Chamber ambassadors in your Navy Chamber jackets for welcoming us here today and for your continued hospitality. To Kathy Gordon and the Bond campaign team at Shemeketa, thank you for your strategic support of the Salem Chamber in sponsoring today's Forum Speaker Luncheon. Each month, the Forum Speaker Series luncheons will be presented by our partners at Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions. Thank you again to the John family for your continued support, and we wish to recognize all of the team members from Hagen Hamilton in attendance today. Next month, we're very pleased to bring you a challenging but important program. On Monday, November 18th, the Salem Chamber Forum will host a profile on the state of healthcare in Salem, specifically updates and new information on fentanyl's local impact. Thank you to our partners at Salem Health for gathering an outstanding panel of experts on November 18th. We encourage you to register today at salemchamber.org. Before we wrap up with our flower centerpiece giveaway, I want to make note of 2 new faces that you may have seen floating around in here today. Two folks that have joined the chamber team. Jameson Gideon, go ahead and stand up or wave your hand, stand up. Jameson Gideon as the Director of Business Advocacy, and Kirsty Rudich, which I'm not sure where she's at. She's back here as our new C-Tech Business Liaison. Welcome. We look forward to great things from both of you. And finally, we close with our flower centerpiece giveaway provided each month by our partners at Roth's Fresh Markets. Thank you, Roth's. Today's winner is Wendy Valise. So please come up and get your flowers, and thank you all. We are adjourned. See you on the 18th.